How about we do one of those cooking challenges, but this time no cooking. So this will be in my cheap-ish series. The objective here will be to make 3 dishes from a selection of 8 different cheap-ish ingredients that I buy at the supermarket from different sections, departments or categories. Plus water, salt and pepper, 1 herb, 1 spice, 1 sauce,
1 singular sensation,
1 tablespoon of fat or oil, and 1 foraged or homegrown item. The key difference with this video is there will be no cooking. That is, no deliberate application of heat in order to transform or prepare the ingredients. No baking, no barbecuing, blanching, boiling, braising, coddling, confiture, deep frying, dry roasting, no flambe, fondue, fricassee, and definitely no frying. Also no grilling, griddling, haybox cooking, microwaving, pan frying, parbaking, parboiling, poaching, pressure cooking, reduction, rendering, roasting, rotisserie, sautéing, searing, simmering, slow cooking, sous vide, steaming, stewing or stir frying, and definitely no toasting. Of course, this does mean some of the things I buy may already be cooked. This isn't a raw food challenge, and appliances whose primary purpose is not heating, such as the food processor or electric whisk, are still fine. Those are the parameters. Let's go shopping. This time I'll be shopping in Aldi in Weymouth. The first thing that greets us when we walk in is what they call their Super 6, which is a periodically changing selection of special offers for produce. None of these look especially tempting though. I think an obvious choice for a no cooking challenge is going to be some sort of salad, so I spent a little while looking at the various options there. I could have bought some little gem lettuce, but that's only one thing. These bags of salad have less total weight of produce in them, but they contain a variety, and variety is important in these challenges. Looking at the fruit, I was tempted by pears, but they're still rock hard and I like them to be at least starting to ripen. There were apples on the Super 6 offer, but these apples here are cheaper still. Very tempted to get a tin of beans. I don't mind eating cold baked beans, but let's get something a bit different. In terms of packets and such, there's no point getting instant noodles or rice because there's no cooking this time. So we could get some tortilla chips. Those could work. But for just a couple pence more, there are these peanuts. I want something with a bit of acidity, and Aldi's selection of pickles is really quite small, just about half a dozen different offerings for pickle, but over on the other side there are some jalapenos. I think those will be useful because it's a spice as well as a foodstuff. In the chiller section there are various sliced cooked meats, but I didn't see anything that grabbed me. Obviously I won't be buying raw meat this time, but in the fish section there are some things like cooked mackerel, salmon and prawns. Or this. In the bakery they were completely out of their cheapest sliced loaves, and since I'm shopping the day before, a French stick would dry out quite a bit overnight. So let's look for something else. These 6 packs of soft rolls looked okay. I'll get wholemeal because I prefer that over white. And then finally in dairy, I could get cheese spread or triangles for 99p, but how about this mozzarella? So that's my 8 items. Let's head for home. Okay, well, here comes the haul from that shopping. First, we've got a 6-pack of wholemeal rolls. It doesn't say the weight in total, I don't think. It's just a pack of 6. 45 pence. A bag of bistro salad. 160 grams, and it looks like it is... Oh well, it's shredded beetroot, baby spinach, lamb's lettuce, and ruby red chard. 69 pence. There were other salad options there. I could have got whole lettuce, but I thought this had a bit more variety in it. Apples. A pack of 6 apples for 99 pence. Now, on the receipt it says Gala apples, but these look more like Braeburn to me. They had Gala and Braeburn in there. They're wonky apples. So these are apples that, for one reason or another, didn't meet the precise standards necessary for other supermarket categories or offerings. And so, yeah, they're sold here as slightly imperfect or whatever. 99 pence. A little jar of pickled jalapenos. Sliced jalapenos in vinegar, is it? Yeah, spirit vinegar. 210 grams, 110 grams drained weight, 75 pence. A can of peeled potatoes in water, 560 grams, drained weight 345 grams. I think this might be the first time we've had these on... In fact, I know this is the first time we've had these on this series because I don't often buy these. I think the last time I bought these was when we were going camping many years ago. This is potatoes, water, calcium chloride, and ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C. That was 39 pence. Seafood sticks. These used to be called crab sticks, but they don't actually contain any crab. I think maybe they used to contain a little bit of crab for flavouring. But anyway, they're called seafood sticks these days, and this is something called surimi, which is minced fish stuck back together and textured into shellfish-like pieces using sugar, water, reconstituted egg white, wheat starch, potato starch, and flavouring. It does contain crustaceans, the flavouring, so presumably there's a little bit of shrimpy, crabby flavour in there anyway. But ready to eat, it's cooked white fish that's been reformed to resemble crustacean meat. This was 99 pence. A pack of mozzarella in brine. What have we got? 200 grams, drained weight 125 grams. That was 69 pence. And then finally, a pack of roasted salted peanuts, 200 grams, 59 pence. That brings the total haul to £5.54, which is actually a rather good price for this series. Is that because I went to Aldi? It might be, but what I'm going to do actually before the end of this video is go back out and price exactly these items from a few other supermarkets, and we'll see how they compare. I think Aldi and Lidl are probably cheaper than some of the other supermarkets, although it very much depends on the kinds of things you buy. Anyway, a few things here need to go in the fridge, and tomorrow I need to make this into 3 different dishes. So just having a think about what I could have for my foraged or homegrown item. I've got some raspberries here. I could have raspberries, but I can't really think of a coherent way to integrate these into the other ingredients I've got. I'm sure they'd make a nice salad garnish, but yeah, we do have a few raspberries. Blackberries are also just coming into season now as well, so there are some very fine looking blackberries out there. There's also, let's have a look at what else we've got homegrown. There's some nice looking watercress now in the littlest watercress farm. That's ready to pick, so we could have watercress. Could I have watercress as my herb instead of a vegetable? Maybe I could make the argument that watercress is a herb. Not really much point having runner beans. I don't think you're meant to eat those raw. And courgettes. Courgettes are doing very well now. The pea plants are all but dead. There are peas in here, and they're going to be quite big and mealy now, which is not much point having those if I've got peanuts. There's goosefoot. I could forage goosefoot from my own garden. You can see all these little seeds dropping off of it. And then we've got chard, but we've got chard in the salad anyway. So what else have we got? We've got some radish pods. These are the seed pods of a radish that I've just allowed to go to seed, and these are every bit as delicious as the radish roots. We've got spring onions, bulbs that have grown from the onions that the onion bases I planted as an experiment. They've done okay. I've actually got a red onion that I planted there, so we've got red spring onions as well. So lots of options, but I think we should venture into the tomato jungle, because I think we've got some ripe tomatoes in here somewhere. Here we go. So we've got some nice ripe tomatoes down here. This is a variety called Koralik. There's another few up here and here. So I think we're going to be having some tomatoes. Oh, there's some of these little berry tomatoes as well. So I think we'll have tomatoes today. I mean, I know all tomatoes are technically berries, but this variety, I believe, had berry in the name, because that's the normal size for these tomatoes. Okay, well, that's not bad. For my spice, I think I'm going to have fennel seed. That fennel plant there, the other side of the downstairs greenhouse, I'm standing on the retaining wall, by the way. I will try not to fall into the glass. Let's go and have a look at that fennel plant down there. So this fennel has got a bit big and unruly, but somewhere in here we're going to find there are some developing seed pods. So I think we'll have that as the spice. So fennel seed, but fresh fennel seed, or maybe just fennel flowers anyway. But a nice aniseedy spice that will go very well with fish. I think if we were to have the leaves, that would be a herb. And for my herb, I think we'll have chives. So chives have recovered very nicely since I cut them all down for freezing. And they have recovered okay. They're looking a little bit faded. But I've still got some frozen chives, so I think chives will be the herb. Actually, what am I talking about? We've got tomatoes, and look at this basil I've got in the greenhouse here. It would just be a great shame not to use that lovely basil, especially as we've got tomatoes. And then for sauce, I think it only really makes sense to have mayonnaise. We've got fish, we've got salad, we've got potatoes. Mayonnaise is the only choice really that makes a lot of sense. And for the oil, I'm going to have olive oil, because we've got some spicy vinegar, so I can make a vinaigrette with these two things. Before we get going on the first dish, I've got something later in the day that I think I will need some stale bread for. Now, these soft rolls are anything but stale at the moment. They're actually lovely, soft brown bread. So let's make some stale bread. Hopefully this will be ready by the end of the day. So I'm going to cut this into very thin slices like that, and we'll lay that out on a plate and just let it dry out. Normally I'd put that just under the grill or something if I wanted crunchy dry bread for breadcrumbs, but we're doing no cooking, so we don't want flies crawling all over that. So I've got this cake cover that will just keep that open to the air. Hopefully that bread will dry out and go crispy before the end of the day. First meal is going to be brunch, so let's make something brunchy using these seafood sticks. Now these are notionally crab-ish, lobster-ish, but I always find them a little bit bland, so they're going to need a little bit of dressing up. We'll have some of these jalapenos, and we're going to make something a little bit like tartar sauce, but instead of capers and cornichons, it's going to have these jalapenos in it. So we'll chop those nice and fine. And yeah, I think because we've got an acidic pickled vegetable here, we'll end up with something that's got a kind of a tartar sauce vibe, but obviously not the right ingredients. I also think we want something that's a little bit sweet in there, so I'm going to grate one of these apples. What I'm going to do is squeeze the apple juice out. I'm going to make sandwiches, and I don't want soggy sandwiches. So squeeze the apple juice out. That will not go to waste. That's a lot of apple juice from just one apple. That apple juice can go straight in the fridge for now. And then just to stop that apple discolouring, I'm going to have a little bit of the vinegar here from the jalapenos. Next, I want those fennel seeds. So these little fennel seeds, they're very much in the early stages of development. I don't want any of the wiry stalk, so I'm just going to snip off these little developing seed pods. It's a kind of aniseed flavour, not something everybody enjoys, but I do. And I will just give that a little chop. Just to expose some of the flavours. And then seafood sticks. Strange things, these. So we'll have a few of these. And they're weirdly individually wrapped in plastic that's hard to recycle, but I'll give it my best shot. And the thing with these is that they do kind of shred and pull apart, just the way that they're constructed. They shred and pull apart into strands, a little bit like the way crab meat does. Got to say, actually, I've had these seafood sticks from, usually buy these in Lidl, and these ones from Aldi, I'm going to say these are not such good quality, if quality is even a criterion here. These seem a little bit more watery and gummy than the ones that I get from Lidl. So that's 6 of my 16 seafood sticks. A little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. And I will just run the knife through that a couple of times, just so it's not massive long strands. This is going to have a good squirt of mayonnaise in there. So let's have a look at these canned potatoes then. These are canned in water with calcium chloride and ascorbic acid, which is an antioxidant. Happens to be vitamin C, but it works as an antioxidant, presumably to stop the potatoes going brown. So there we go. Kind of weird cooked potatoes in a can. I'm just going to put them in there for the moment so I can see what's going on. There are some iffy looking ones there, which I'll probably avoid. Why am I getting potatoes out if I'm making sandwiches? Well, I'm going to put a little layer of cooked potato in my sandwiches. I don't think it's worth washing the knife, so texture is oddly soft but also weirdly resilient for a potato. We'll have a couple of these nice brown rolls. These are really nice malty soft brown rolls. Really quite decent bread for the price. So my sandwiches now, I'm not putting butter on my sandwiches because my fat allowance is going to be olive oil, but also there's mayonnaise in the filling. I think we might just have a couple more slices of the jalapenos in there, just as a nice little spicy surprise. Okay, nice big generous blob of fake crabby sandwich filling. There's really enough there for 3 rolls actually, but let's make them nice and generous. A few of these beetroot strands across the top, just for a bit of additional texture and colour. Okay, and then, so just a little bit of salad garnish, and we'll go for the lamb's lettuce, I think, which is those leaves, and some of the red leaves. A few roasted peanuts, and then I'm going to cut these on the bias like that. I mean, maybe I shouldn't have cut them at all, but they do look a bit more pretty like that. This won't go to waste. So there we go, that's lunch. No, it's not, it's brunch.
All right, well, I do think that maybe slicing these sandwiches was a bit pointlessly fancy, but anyway, let's give them a taste. So yeah, these seafood sticks, or as we used to call them, crab sticks, they're not very seafoody, but dressing them up like this with the jalapenos, the mayonnaise, the apple, actually the sweetness from the apple, the crunch and the earthy flavour from the beetroot, does carry them a bit along the way of being a bit more seafoody. This is not a crab sandwich such as you might enjoy from the lobster pot on Portland Bill, but in its own right, it's pretty good, especially considering the relatively humble nature of its ingredients. The potatoes are kind of lost in there, but they do add a little bit of kind of hearty, filling bite to it. And I can taste the fennel seeds, and they are doing a job of making this a little bit more seafoody and seashore adjacent. So given our limited palette of ingredients today, it is inevitable that these dishes will be, to a certain extent, a bit samey. And that's why the challenge is to create 3 dishes, not a menu. But that is the nature of the challenge. It's not about realism. It's about trying to explore the creative opportunities from these limited ingredients. Anyway, that was brunch. This next part may be a little ill-advised because I'm going to try to make a cold soup. I don't have the right ingredients for Tuscan bread soup, but it's going to be something that takes a few steps in that direction. This is the bread that I sliced and left out earlier, and it's now pretty much dried out. Not quite crisp, but it's brittle at least. So that's going to be the thing we add last. So we need some liquid for this soup. And that's going to be made of some of these tomatoes. It seems a sin to actually blend these tomatoes to make a sauce, but that's what I'm going to do. So I use the squashiest ones. We'll definitely save a few of them for garnish, and we'll save a few for something else later. Okay, yeah, I'll save those few. And I'm going to use the brine from this mozzarella. The cheese is not going to go in here, but the brine it was packed in is what we're going to use. I'll just seal that up and put that back in the fridge, and we'll use that later. Now you can of course tell that a handheld blender is going to make an appearance now, but actually before we do that, I am just going to put a little bit of fennel seed in there, just one little bunch. Just in keeping with the kind of red colour thing, I'll put a few little bits of this beetroot in there, not too much. Before I blend it, we'll have some pepper in there and some salt, and away we go. I am of course aware, that's kind of pink strawberry milkshake colour. Now I am of course aware that I've blended up the seeds a little bit from those tomatoes, but I don't think that'll be a problem with these cherry tomatoes. Let's have a little taste and see where we're at on flavour. Actually it tastes pretty good, very tomatoey. So into here, snip some little shreds of basil. This is going to be a vastly simplified version of a bread soup, but we're working with what we got. I don't want to dilute it too much, but I think it will stand to have a little bit of water in there just to loosen it a bit. And then we just got to crumble up this bread into chunks, stir it in, let it soak up those flavours. This is a texture thing I suppose not everybody's going to get, because wet bread can be horrible. But this is not soggy sandwich bread. This is bread that's been dried out and then rehydrated. But it is going to be one of these things that you either love or hate. I think it is going to take all of that bread roll. So we'll have the whole lot in there, torn up into chunks or crumbled. And the crumbs, I suppose. So that's all of that. Yeah, and it's now getting to be slightly thickened in texture. Well, I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit just to hydrate the bread. I think a little bit more basil because it is so good with tomatoes. Yes, you can see that's really thickened up now. But that's what I wanted, that's what we are expecting. We'll perhaps just have a little splash of water in there just to loosen it up. Okay, one more taste, because obviously the bread will have absorbed some flavours and things, so we're just tasting for seasoning now. It can stand to have a bit of acidity, so we're going to have a bit of that vinegar from the jalapenos in there. I think my pepper mill's run dry. It can definitely stand a bit more pepper, and I think it does actually need a little bit more salt as well. Okay, right, I think that's about the right
consistency or something. Let's get that served up. I'm sorry if that doesn't look appetizing. It is unusual, I think, but it is what it is. Okay, right, well, I'm going to get that outside and we'll give it a taste. Okay, well, especially here under the blue sunshade, it really doesn't look that appealing. It looks a bit too pinky grey. In sunlight, which I'll get a picture of it. Actually, let's get a picture of it in sunlight before we tuck in. In sunlight, I think the colour is a little bit more acceptable. But of course, paprika or roasted red peppers or more tomatoes. More tomatoes. I forgot the little tomatoes. Anyway, let's give it a taste. The flavour's really good. The texture ends up being like overhydrated couscous. So not by any means terrible. I mean, I think that was not bad. The texture of the wholemeal bread, I think, helps for the bread not to be completely soggy. That helped it to have a little bit of a grainy texture. The flavour was really good. The tomatoes, the basil, the whey from the cheese. I am pretty much the definition of an unfussy eater, though, so take what I say with a pinch of salt. But yeah, the flavours were good. The texture was weird, but I thought it was okay. I enjoyed that. So supper is going to consist of several salads, starting, I think, with a potato salad. So I will pick the nicest looking of these tin potatoes. Thinking about how much potato salad I really want to eat on my plate. It's probably about that much. I think I'll just get most of the moisture off of those. I'll just chunk those up into quarters for the small ones, 6 or 8 for the bigger ones. Okay, and now this is going to be quite similar to the dressing that we had on the fake crab sandwich earlier. Chop this up a bit more coarsely this time. And this is going to have some of these things in it. Let's see what 4 looks like. Okay, and instead of shredding these this time, I'll cut them into neat little chunks. Yeah, that looks about the right amount for that amount of potato. In fact, that's far too much potato salad. I've made about twice as much as I really want. Anyway, mayonnaise. Okay, so that's my potato salad done. That'll just go in the fridge for a second. Next is going to be an apple and peanut salad. It's going to be apples and peanuts, but also in a dressing made from apples and peanuts. So, I've got that apple juice from earlier, which has discoloured a little bit. Little handful of peanuts in there, and we're back with hand blender. Reluctant to make everything spicy, but I'm going to have a little bit of this vinegar in there. More peanuts. Right, let's just see what we got here. Yeah, almost thick enough, I'd say. Just needs something else to thicken it. I think that will actually be a slice of apple. So, just blend that apple in as well. Alright, another taste. Yeah, it's definitely thicker now. I tell you what, peanut and apple's a good combo. There's not going to be so much of this as there is of the potato salad because that all went a bit crazy. I'm going to cube this apple up into pieces that are kind of similar in size to a peanut. And that goes in there together with some peanuts. And then the dressing. That's going to go in the fridge now. And then I need a little vinaigrette to go on the leaves. Half a tablespoon of olive oil. I should put the other half tablespoon of oil in that bread soup. Now this is going to need something to emulsify it, and I'm going to try and just put the last little bit of this blended peanut sauce here in there to see if that will act as an emulsifier. I've no idea if it will. It seems like it might. Then we need a little bit of vinegar and a little whisk. Yeah, I think that might have actually worked, kind of. I think I'll try and get this vinaigrette to take a bit of colour from this beetroot. Yes, it's not emulsifying properly because it is splitting after a moment or two, but that'll be fine on a salad. Let's just see if that beetroot will infuse at all into the vinegar. So we've got lots of this lovely leafy salad. I think we'll have a big pile of that over one side. The mozzarella, I'm just going to kind of tear that on top of the green salad. I think that's probably enough. Some of my potato and seafood stick salad, and also this peanut and apple mixture. I'll give that a bit more of the beetroot on top there, just to kind of differentiate it from the other things on the plate. Vinaigrette-ish. And tiny tomatoes. There we go. Several salads. That potato salad is going to need some pepper.
Right then. Well, let's give each of these things a try. So the mozzarella and the leaves, and vinaigrette and tomato, if I can get a tomato. Okay, the piquant potato salad, this has got quite a lot of jalapenos in it, although I seem to have lost them all. Canned potatoes have got a weird texture, but they're okay in a potato salad. And then the apple and peanut slaw. I think it could have been pureed. The sauce could have been pureed a bit finer. It's a little bit grainy. Flavour is really good though. Apple and peanuts, just a very good combo. I'll see if I can get a little bit of everything together. Not as good as consuming the things separately. Altogether quite pleasant, nothing to dislike here. So I think we'll head back to Studio Shrimp now for the scoring and any conclusions and lessons learned.
Studio Shrimp here. That went reasonably well, I thought. But let's score the dishes. Brunch of fake crab rolls. I think this one deserves 8 out of 10. It was full of good flavours and textures and was a really satisfying sandwich. There's no way I would ever mistake it for a real crab sandwich, but it's pretty good for what it is. The grated apple goes really well with the shredded surimi, and the spicy acidity of the jalapenos is just right. Those seafood sticks are surprisingly easy to elevate quite a way above their basic form. They just need a little bit of love to make them really quite good. Après lunch bread soup. Good flavours. Debatable texture, although I enjoyed it, but not really visually appealing. This dish deserves more tomato and some pepper and or paprika, and I really should have used the olive oil here. Not that it was lacking in flavour, it was genuinely tasty, it just could have been more than it was. Only 5 out of 10. I mean, I honestly and wholeheartedly enjoyed it, but I don't think I'd be proud to serve this to anyone else, at least not in this form. Supper of several salads. Good, again, 8 out of 10, losing a point on the texture of the peanut and apple thing. I'm not sure that blending it longer would have made it any smoother, but the smoother peanut sauce is what it needed. The flavour combination of peanut and apple is very fine though. I'm sure that's not a big surprise, as I think apple slices dipped in peanut butter is a fairly popular snack. The tinned potatoes do have a weird, almost rubbery texture, but in a potato salad that just about works okay. The green salad with mozzarella was very tasty, but a point off for that vinaigrette. Maybe I should have tried using some mayo to get it to emulsify, or that might have been a disaster. Everything on the plate tasted good, though. All in all, taking a step back, this is maybe the most satisfyingly healthy feeling set of dishes I've eaten on this series. It felt like there was plenty of freshness and vitality on the plate. The plates here are all a bit light, but remember the objective here is to devise dishes, not to create a day's menu. This is not a diet or a recommendation. This is just you watching me playing with my food. At the end of the day, there was a fair bit of food left, comprising half the potatoes and bread rolls and mozzarella, a little over half of the peanuts, 4 apples, 2/3 of the jar of jalapenos, about 1/3 of the bagged salad, and 6 of the seafood sticks. So just about enough that I could have made more or less double these servings. Lessons learned. Obviously, I think I already knew that I take cooking for granted, but this brought it home. Just to be able to toast that bread, or stew down some tomatoes, or boil some nice fresh potatoes. All really simple things, but would have tangibly improved the dishes. And I suppose I do also take for granted my own relative freedom from food issues. It's really easy just to think that people are being awkward or fussy, who have issues with certain foods or flavours or textures or combinations. I can't really imagine what it must be like. But that doesn't have to mean I don't treat it as real. Earlier in the video, I did promise a price comparison between Aldi and a few other supermarkets, so here's that. I haven't included every supermarket chain, just the ones I could conveniently visit to look at the prices. And I did have to visit them all because in some cases like Lidl, there's no online store to get the information, and for some of the others, the online product listing is missing small but critical pieces of information such as the drained weight of products packed in liquid. Aldi is the overall winner on price, beating Lidl by 2p. There are a lot of cases where the pricing in other supermarkets is exactly matched to Aldi on purpose. And there are quite a few cases where it was very obvious that the product in multiple different supermarkets was the same thing under a different label. The tinned potatoes, for example, in Aldi, Asda, Lidl, Sainsbury's and Tesco are all the same shape and size can, with the same gross and drained weight. It's very likely these all come from the same supplier. Same thing with the peanuts and the mozzarella. The identical pack sizes and form factor are not accidental. But not all offerings were the same pack sizes in all supermarkets, so I've had to normalise the prices to compare them. What I mean by that is that the price of jalapenos in Aldi was 75p for 110 grams drained weight. So if the other shops had different sized jars, I've calculated the equivalent price for the amount sold in Aldi. That is the price for 110 grams of drained weight of jalapenos in those stores. I've done this for all products. Those are the columns in bold in the spreadsheet, and they are the fairest comparison. So here are the cases where other stores were the same as Aldi, highlighted in blue. Here in red, where the other stores were more expensive, and here in green, where they were cheaper. So for this small sample of products, Aldi was pretty nearly the lowest in price. And I'm sure that rings true for a lot of their loyal customer base. And obviously, I think it is widely recognised that Aldi is cheap. I mean, some of the other supermarkets endorsed that view by naming Aldi in their price match labelling on the shelf edge. But there are a couple of things to bear in mind, and those are, firstly, that this selection of products we're comparing is based on me wandering around Aldi, specifically looking for the cheapest things. So there could be some selection bias there. I think if I'd been selecting the cheapest products I could find in, say, Lidl or Tesco, there might be a little bit more green on the page. But also, and I think this is just my subjective experience, I have been disappointed on quality a little bit more with shopping at Aldi than I typically am elsewhere. Not always, and indeed it's important to note that the bread rolls in this video were quite lovely, and the mozzarella was also very good, despite being cheap. But maybe one tentative example of this quality thing is the seafood sticks. Not even a high quality product to begin with, but the offering here from Aldi just seemed a bit wetter and gummy. Compared with the same priced offering from Lidl, here's me shredding those two products side by side. The difference might not be obvious on camera, but I could perceive it in the product in real life. Not a big deal, and you could dismiss this as just an aesthetic difference. None of this is to persuade you of anything or sway you. I just thought there was an opportunity for a spreadsheet here, so that's what we have. In terms of shopping for these challenge videos though, I will probably always skip from one supermarket to another because loyalty is for dogs and they don't all have identical range and variety. And sometimes the higher price in some supermarkets is part of what makes it a challenge anyway. I hope this has been interesting, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.